back in session with Professor P. I hope you guys are all staying safe and healthy out there. All right, we're going to move on to Chapter 7, the emergence of Homo sapiens and the Upper Paleolithic World. We're talking about us now, people. 50,000 years ago, that's us. That's when we came about, all right? So they're really talking about that. Homo heidelbergensis was known for being a transitional fossil in between Homo erectus and us. Not a lot of fossils found, but that's the whole debate, is they were maybe archaic Homo sapiens, but basically transitional fossils is what you got to take out of that. Neanderthal lived about 200,000 years ago. One of the first species ever found in Neander Valley, Germany. That's why it was named that. And it was really important to understand Neanderthal. There's been a debate. Is Neanderthal part of our line or not? The debate still continues. Neanderthal had a very big brain, 1450 cc's in the brain, but it doesn't necessarily mean the brain was developed like our brain, okay? There's always that ongoing debate. They had a very sloping forehead, a really big brow ridge, no chin, large jaws. People may have been debating that we may have been coexisting with Neanderthal, but that's just still a debate. What are some of these characteristics of Neanderthal? Neanderthal lived, like I said, between 300,000 and 40,000 years ago, and during what was called the Middle Paleolithic. Paleolithic is like certain like time periods, and lithics means stone. All right, so that's what they're really talking about. So let's get into the Mosterian tool tradition. And basically, Mosterian tool assemblage is a smaller proportion of large core tools such as like hand axes and cleavers, but also some small flake tools such as scrapers. They started to retouch tools as well. Lots of different points involved with the Mosterian tool tradition. The Levalloisian method was a method that allowed flake tools of a predetermined size to be shaped by a core. So basically a striking platform at one end, and you had like standardization of size and shapes. It's like going to Home Depot and going, okay, I want that tool and I want this. It was predetermined. It was standardized in a way, which we never had that before, right? Before the Levalloisian. All right, post-Acheulean Africa, or post-Acheulean is, remember Acheulean tools were the hand axe? Well, now we're talking about spear points and chisels, and different kinds of knives, but now we're having a variety of things in the post-Acheulean. What were some of the home sites like? Caves, rock shelters, open air sites located near water because water was advantageous, all these things. Getting food, there was a variety of food in these different environments depending on if you were in Europe. Europe could have had wild horses, ox, deer, wolves, foxes, fish, different kinds of birds. Just depending on where you are, we're going to determine that kind of like hunting and the kind of food supply that you were in. Basically, if you were near water, you were going to have like a lot of access to marine life and things like that. So there's two theories that actually talk about the origin of modern human beings. One is called the single origin theory. Many of you guys know that as like the Africa theory. The second one is called the multi-regional theory. So let's talk about that. So the single origin theory explains that all humans sort of emerged in one part of the old world, which was Africa, and then they spread out, replacing like Neanderthal, okay? So they replaced, right? The single origin theory is basically replacing things, Neanderthal going extinct. Multi-regional theory basically states this, that that Neanderthal was just a phase in like human development. So multi-regional theory means we were everywhere, right? And with being everywhere, we had phases in human development. Single origin theory says we're in Africa, we come out of Africa, we spread around, we replace Neanderthal, we replace things, that's it, right? And we replace them through several different theories. Multi-regional says we were in all different places and Neanderthal was just a phase in human development. So in essence, we are Neanderthal. Okay, that's what those two theories are basically saying. All right, you could turn your concept sheet if you printed them out or just continue to listen. What happened to Neanderthal? There was a lot of things. They said Neanderthal first, we could have coexisted. Modern humans could have killed them off because we're good at that. We could have interbred with them. And then here we are today, right? We could have driven them to extinction because we were competing with the natural resources in the environment. Lots of different things could have happened to Neanderthal, but they're all just theories, right? Upper Paleolithic was between 40,000 and 10,000 years ago. Sort of what was going on, what was sort of the lifestyle. A lot of cultural developments happening of that time. We talk about Pleistocene megafauna. And Pleistocene megafauna are those big, big, big animals. That's why they're called megafauna. Things, like a mammoth, things like a saber-toothed tiger, a giant sloth, right? We actually have a documentary, I believe I put it in there, called Mega Beasts. If I didn't, I'll go ahead. A lot of my students like that because it shows like these big animals that existed at the time, all right? So that becomes very important to understand. When we look at Pleistocene megafauna, we're looking at large game and very difficult to take down. A lot of you think we were just sort of killing them off. It was very difficult to take down Pleistocene megafauna, and it was also very dangerous. All right, Dolní Věstonice. That was in the Czech Republic. Why is that important? It was one of the first sites that was an entire settlement plan. There was about probably 100 to 125 people in that area. There were baked ovens, there were musical instruments, there were hearths, there were artwork like the Venus statues. So Dolní Věstonice was very important to understanding these kind of sites. Two tool techniques came about during the Upper Paleolithic: indirect percussion and pressure flaking. Indirect percussion was basically striking with a hammer and doing like a hammer strike punch, right, to create tools. And the stone tools, chisel-like stone tools used for carving and different things. Pressure flaking was just not throwing away a tool anymore, but you're retouching it to use it again. So you're not really striking off flakes anymore. You're doing a pressure, sort of a pressure type of removing of the flakes to retouch and reuse your tools. All right, that becomes very important. Ethnographic analogy is really observing, it's understanding particular ways of using tools by looking at contemporary people and living with modern people today that still live like the past. Looking at New Guinea population, looking at people like the Hadza, looking at, the Maasai, looking at very indigenous populations and looking at how they're using tools gives us an idea of how maybe people were using tools in the past. But you have to remember, our hunting and gathering population has shrunk. They really live in remote areas of the world today, living a traditional lifestyle. Okay, so that's what they're talking about with ethnographic analogy. How were tools used? Lots of ways. Just think about it as you're sitting sort of at your job or at home. Cutting meat, they were used for throwing in warfare. They were used for harpooning. They were used, to help with scavenging. We use tools for a lot of things, making clothes to cover ourselves, all of those kinds of things. All right. Art, there's 3 locations in the caves where art was located. So we're not talking about like a geographical area. We're talking about inside the caves. There were 3 locations. The first was the cave entrances. All right. The second part were called the galleries. That was the middle of the cave. The last part was the inner reaches, the back part of the cave. What was typically the subject matter historically were the animals. It was like a teaching tool. Imagine if we were hunting and gathering and I left and another group came and it drew the kind of animal was there, how to take the animal down. It was like an educational chalkboard in a way, right? These caves. And really you weren't supposed to put humans on the cave because they believed it was bad luck. Historically, if you look at, there weren't humans that were actually, that came later on in life, right? So that becomes important to understand. All right, the Black Venus statues were also another art form that we're going to get into, and we also have an article about that. All right, let's get to Monte Verde, Chile. Monte Verde, Chile was very important because it was the first child's footprints. And it was a site where they found 700 stone tools. They believe that as we came across out of Africa, across Beringia or the Bering Strait, that we went into Monte Verde, Chile first and did settlement there, okay? So that's why we want to get into what you guys understand about Beringia. Beringia is the Bering Strait, okay? It's the long bridge, right, that you guys have been taught early on that goes between, Alaska and Siberia, and we're going across this Bering Strait and walking, right? That's a myth. People were actually boating there. People were walking across Beringia. People were living and inhabiting the bridge. People were harpooning. It wasn't like we just all got up and walked across Africa. Okay, so that becomes important. When you see my videos, sometimes you're going to see people walk behind me. Sometimes my St. Bernard's there, so just ignore them and continue to listen. So the Bering Strait, it was very important to understand. It was exposed, and this land bridge exposed between like 60,000 and 25,000 years ago as well. So we call it Beringia in anthropology, but it is the land bridge, the Bering Strait, where different kinds of linguistic groups came across, and we look at those groups and they went into different places. Like I said, the first one was Monteverde, Chile, that they talk about there. That becomes very important to understand. All right. I hope you enjoyed that chapter, The Emergence of Homo sapiens and the Upper Paleolithic World, Chapter 7. See you later. Professor P will see you for Chapter 8, which is Food Production and the Rise of States. Have a great day. Bye.